We've been asking for quite a few months if we could all get together and talk about House Bill 581. So thank you to everybody. Thank you for the residents for being here. Thank you to the councils and the county for being here. To open our meeting, will you stand and join me for the invocation and the pledge? Father God, please be with us this evening as we make decisions on our residents' behalf. Lead us and guide us in all that you do, that we have the wisdom to do what's right for the many. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I believe all of the cities have a quorum. Alto, would you like to open your meeting? Mayor, I see you coming in.
Yes.
Would you like to open your meeting?
Yes. Yes. Okay, you want me to come up there?
No, you can do it from there.
Okay. Do I call this meeting and then town about to order?
Baldwin, I'd like to call the Baldwin special called meeting to order this evening. Thank you. We have Clarksville next, Mayor. Cornelia.
Do the same, call special call meeting to order.
Thank you. Demarest.
I'd like to call the city of Demarest meeting to order.
Thank you. Mount Airy.
I'd like to call the Santa Council meeting with Mount Airy session.
Thank you. Who's next? Tallulah Falls. You do not have a quorum. Thank you for being here, Mike. I appreciate it. And the county.
We don't have a quorum.
You don't have a quorum either? Okay, thank you for being here tonight, Tim. Okay, at this time, pardon? Oh, Deborah, sorry.
You guys, we're good.
You got you? Okay. At this time, we would like to open the meeting for conversation about House Bill 581. We just did this in Banks County. Alto and Baldwin, being in two counties, met with Banks County last week. It was a very fruitful conversation. So, does anybody want to open the floor with comments, questions?
I got one.
Sir?
If we opt into the House Bill 581 and we have a reduction in homeowners taxes, what if the SPLOST doesn't pass? Do we still have to give that rollback?
Yeah, I'm not the answer person, so folks, I'm the MC tonight, and I'm limiting Tim's time. Bill's time.
If y'all can't answer that question, I'm going home.
You want to answer that? Is this a good time for your slides? You want to do that first, and then we can have a conversation?
I will answer that question.
Okay.
All the others as well. I'm Phil Sutton. I've been looking with the legislative delegation at this issue, and this is probably the fourth time some of the cities have heard this, so I will go through it fairly rapidly. House Bill 581 is comprehensive property tax and sales tax reform. So we're dealing with two big issues, sales tax reform and property tax. It is basically a four-part law. It was effective January 1st of 2025. It become effective through the ratification of the constitutional amendment on November 5th that we all voted on. And it passed fairly strongly. Statewide, it was somewhere in the 65% range, which was fairly strong. It does these four things. The tax assessor's rules reform was probably more than 50% of the 47 pages of law that the legislature passed. A couple of the items in the tax assessor's rules reform, it revised the tax estimate notice on the tax bill. So that will be different this year than it has been in past years. 3-year lock for appeals. If a person appeals the property tax value and they win the appeal, it locks their appeal in place for 3 years. That had been a practice, but it now is in the law. Sales tax ratio studies, it puts the state and the local tax assessors on the same rules. It used to be 2 different rules, and we had a lot of consternation between the state and the local tax assessors board, so it fixes that. And it fixes a number of other very technical issues related to how tax assessors and tax commissioners deal with property tax. The legislation also authorizes a statewide floating-based property tax for homestead exemption for all local governments, but it has an opt-out option. So any city or any county or any school board can opt out if they choose to. They have to have 3 public hearings and advertise it through the official legal organ of the county. It simplifies the local sales tax cap, which was fairly complex. It is still complex, but a little bit more straightforward than it used to be. There was a maximum of 8 cents of sales tax. That's moved to 9 cents is the maximum. And the fourth thing is it creates a new type of local sales tax, which at one point they called a floss, and that's sort of the nickname of it's a flexible local option sales tax. I'll talk about the property tax rules and procedural changes very briefly. Removes the estimated current tax base on the last year's millage rate, and instead the estimate of taxes that local governments need to advertise each year is going to be based on an estimated rollback rate. If you don't roll back your taxes based on inflationary increase, then there's a disclaimer that has to be put on the tax bill. It codifies the requirement that parcels that are appealed, and the person wins the appeal, it's in place for at least 3 years. It provides a 3-year lock on the property value, and it removes the provision limiting the fair market value to a sales price the year after the sale. This was a housing crisis rule and really no longer applies, and so that's been removed. Statewide floating homestead exemption, it establishes a statewide floating homestead, which is based on the inflation rate as determined by the DOR. The inflation rate is going to be based on the CPI. It requires approval through a referendum, which has been approved, and it applies to the tax year 2025. The exemption allows the tax digest assessment on homestead exempt properties to only rise at an annual rate of the CPI, Consumer Price Index. Property value reassessments with the sale of property tax adjusts with any substantial change in property, or it can adjust with the sale to a new property owner. The exemption will be in addition to other homestead exemptions. So if you already have the homestead exemption in place, and most of the cities here have homestead exemptions in place, this would be an additional homestead exemption on top of that. If there is both a freeze and a floating exemption that are available, the taxpayer will receive the exemption that's most beneficial. This particularly applies to us in Habersham County because the county has a freeze, which is very beneficial. Once you have a homestead exemption and that goes into place, your property values do not rise at all. It becomes an exemption, although the tax assessor may raise the value of your assessed value. There's an exemption applied that removes it back down to what it was when the freeze went in place. this new homestead exemption, which is called a floating homestead exemption, if you receive a homestead exemption and you're in the city, because the county is going to use their freeze as the homestead exemption that applies to county taxes. For the school board and the cities, they would have the floating homestead exemption, and that value of the property tax digest value of their property can't rise any faster than the CPI, Consumer Price Index. Is that clear to everybody? That's fundamental.
Why do the Board of Education, how come they get it when they're already getting it?
It just simply applies, it's separate. The decision about the homestead exemption is not necessarily, well, for the school board, it's not at all tied to sales tax. The sales tax doesn't change, so there's really not the same kind of incentive that there is for the cities to support the homestead exemption. But in cities, the win for the cities is that they could possibly pass a floss at a later date if they choose, if as a community you decide that you want to put that on the referendum. But that's got to go through a referendum. But those two things are not necessarily connected to each other.
Is the referendum just for the city, or does it have to pass for the whole county?
It'd have to pass for the whole county. Yes, sir. The next point is this revises the upper limit of the number of sales taxes that are available to local governments. It keeps in place the two local taxes that are now available to you, which is easily lost and splost. Most counties have a lost that is beneficial for, it's a rollback on city and county taxes. In Habersham, you're one of 8 counties in the state of Georgia that have an education loss. And so instead of rolling back county and city taxes, that rolls back the school board tax. So we're an anomaly. But so that 2% we get locally. There's an E-splost, which is a separate tax, which is the 7th penny. And then there's a T-splost, which is the 8th penny, which, of course, Harrison does not have at this point. But if you can't have a T-splost if you also have a regional T-splost, transit splost, or MARTA splost. So you can have one type of transportation sales tax. And there's 4 varieties of that. And then one additional tax, sales tax that's been allowed by this legislation is what we call the FLOSS, Flexible Local Option Sales Tax. Now, those governments that already have an OLOS, a C SPLOS, or a MOS are not eligible for the FLOSS. These other property taxes are in metro areas. There's Metro Atlanta. Their water system uses the most, and it's the only application for that. C SPLOS is a Coliseum SPLOS in Macon, and an OLOS, there's 2 or 3 cities that have an OLOS. So creating this SPLOS, it's an up to 1% sales tax for property tax relief. Its only purpose is to roll back property taxes. Okay? So it's not a revenue generator for the local government, so we need to keep that in mind. It's very important. The split between the cities and the counties that levy the ad valorem, for a city or county to participate, they have to levy an ad valorem tax. If they don't levy a tax, they're not eligible. There's a freeze or the float. The county here in Habersham has a freeze. This new law will allow for a floating homestead exemption that floats based on the value, the home value, and it's adjusted every year based on the CPI. Distribution between the county and the city is based on an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement, with the proceeds used exclusively for tax relief, similar to lost. The tax may be levied for up to 5 years, but it requires a new referendum to extend it for another 5 years. So it sunsets every 5 years. For the renewal, local act by the General Assembly will have to be approved by the legislature in order to have this continuing referendum. This is an example of how of the revenue and how it might be split between the counties. This formula, and you can use other formulas, it's based on the total property value and how much each jurisdiction contributes to that total property value. And what this does is it reduces the current millage rate. This is the property tax revenue. The floating property tax revenue would be subtracted from the property tax revenue, and you would get the new property tax revenue for each jurisdiction. So this property tax, new property tax after the float, plus the revenue from the float equals the current property tax. Okay? Those columns all go together. What this does in the end, and what's beneficial for the county and the cities, is that it reduces the overall millage rate. Now, in this case, it would reduce it, if you use that formula, by about 4.4 mils. And this is the new millage rate. The county would go from 12 to 8. The alto would actually go negative. That can't happen. That's not legal under the law, so that we'd have to deal with that if you were to use this formula. But you can see the new property tax reduction in every case is about a 4.4 million reduction. So this shows you another, in a graphic form, current tax. And this was at 2003. When I did this slide, that was the most recent available. There is 2004 available. And, for example, Tallulah Falls is now going to 6. But that's their current millage rate, would be reduced by the revenue that they received from floss, and the new millage rate would be somewhere around 2. That would, yes, ma'am,
So,
Alice.
with the floss, with the revenue that comes in, so let's say economy tanks, nobody's buying anything, that revenue's not coming in, what happens to pay bills? Cut services or go up on the millage rate?
The millage rate sort of, you would assume that would almost you being the decision maker are going to automatically probably adjust it based on how it comes in. If it comes in stronger than you expected, you're going to have to reduce that millage rate more. If it comes in weaker than you expected, you're probably going to have to raise the millage rate to keep the same level of service. The school board's been dealing with this for years, and all local governments that have lost.
Yes, which we do.
Do. And you do on the other side.
We negotiate loss. So that said, so basically in a nutshell, even though the property assessments would only go up at that inflationary rate, your local government can still increase your millage rate to make up the difference.
That's true.
Gotcha.
If they choose
Wanted to
to.
make sure I understood that.
And I think that you're going to have to first do the rollback,
Right,
right?
yes.
And then, but the rollback, if it comes in less, you roll back less.
Yeah.
The rollback's less, automatically. So you really don't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But if you choose to adjust your millage rate, of course, you can adjust your millage rate. Mike?
If I'm not mistaken, you get to set your millage rate based on real numbers every year that you receive.
Absolutely. Yes. Right. And the rollback is based on real numbers too, because it's a year later. You're going to receive one year worth of floss revenue, so you know exactly what that amount is. And then that determines the rollback the following year. So you're always, you sort of, sales tax comes in, then the property tax rollback. Sales tax comes in, then the property tax rollback. So you know what to expect. Just to show you graphically what this would mean, Habersham's now, compared to all the counties in the state, they're here about 12.6 mils. If the voters put in the floss, it would reduce the millage rate to 8.2, 8.3 mils. So that's certainly a benefit to the county. And I will be done very quickly. I'm not going to go through this whole complicated slide, but what you really want to know is this. This is the CPI for the last 12, 13 years. This is the rise of property tax, of values for properties in Habersham County. So I think a simple way to look at this is you can expect that property values may continue to go up at this rate, at 6.4%. And the CPI is, the last 12 years, gone up at 3%. Now this is Demarest numbers, only Demarest. So I'd have to do this, this inflation growth is going to be different for each city. I can do that for you if you want. We've also done that for Tallulah Falls. In Tallulah Falls case, their property values, as determined by the tax assessor, these are tax assessor's numbers, they only went up 0.31 over the last 12 years. So I tell you, each city is probably different. Probably not tremendously different, but there will be differences. So that just compares the growth of the base property tax value and versus the increase based on just inflation. So inflation would have taken the digest up, the total digest up by the 3%, whereas the tax digest grew by almost 83% over that 13 years. So annually it's a 6.3% change. So that means you may be losing in revenue about 3.4% per year. Yes, sir.
Maybe I'm missing something here, but that pretty much assumes that nothing is being bought during that period. Because I understand if you have a homestead and the property is frozen, it's frozen at what it is now. If somebody comes in and buys your house, then won't that set another number and not what it was in the previous, since it's been frozen?
Yep, it'll change it all the time. And this is, I'm just trying to give you just gross general idea about.
I think my point is that Jared, you're kind of, that's really apples and oranges, what you're saying. It's going up, here's the 3% or, but this is the inflationary thing. Well, yeah.
This is what the digest has grown.
I understand.
And this is what it would have grown if you just used 3% inflation. That's all I'm saying. It's no more complicated than that.
It's just growth, not
it's inflationary growth. It's not new property. I pulled all new property out of that number. Okay? There's no new property. This is just inflationary growth. Okay? All new properties pulled out. The number would be completely different. So what does this mean to you as far as a reduction in income? Well, for Alto, as near as I can tell, based on the tax assessor has given us numbers. It says here's the number of the value of homestead property for the city of Alto only. This is the exempt value, this is the millage rate, this is the resulting exemption, and this is the reduction. If we were to assume that that property value is going to go up 3.4% less because we're using an inflationary number rather than the actual predicted change because of home value growth. Because home value in the last 13 years has grown a whole lot more than inflation, right? And so this is a guess, but that's what my guess is that it'd be about $283 for the total, against the total digest. Cornelia, $10,000, almost $11,000. Now, how could this number change? Right now, there's only 353 homestead exemptions in Cornelia. There's about 800 to 900 county exemptions in Cornelia. So I think that if you were to put in floss, you may see the number of exemptions come in 2 or 3 times what they are now, because that's going to change people's behavior. So I'm going to assure you that this number is going to change, but you can see the order of magnitude. If you divide $10,000, $11,000 into Cornelia's total digest value, or the total property tax revenue, it's about 0.4%. So it's 0.4%. Very small. Could it go up to 0.2%? Very likely. But that's kind of order of magnitude you're dealing with. When you look at your whole digest, probably talking about a 1% change per year. Could it be 1.5? Yeah. Could it be less? Yeah. But just to give you sort of a size of the impact it might have. That's all I have. Stephanie, it's all yours. Yes, I'd love to take questions. John?
All right, so there's however many counties in Georgia, 150?
159.
159. Did everybody have this on their ballot back in November?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a statewide referendum. They had to.
Do we know where it passed? How many?
Well, it passed total 65% is what I've been told. I haven't really seen
65%
it.
of counties?
65% of the population of the state,
Okay.
of the voters.
Where I'm at is-
And I believe that in Habersham County, it was similar to that. You know, Tim? 63% approval in Habersham. So the approval throughout the state would have been different.
So I guess I'm asking is, do we know what our peers are doing? Do we know what White County, Stevens County, Raven, Union, Hall, and so forth, if they're having the same conversation? I know that Banks County is having the same conversation right now, but what are the discussions that they're having, and how many people, how many other counties?
I've talked to ACC about that, and they don't really have a tally. They've done some guesswork and believe that a number of cities will opt out. I don't know that they've told me that they think a third of the school boards will opt out. And it's sort of a mixed bag as far as counties are concerned. And they don't have a tally. 535 cities, it's hard to know. It especially seems y'all haven't done anything yet, and all the other cities and all of the 535 cities in the state are in the same position you are. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I think that this is one of those things that's hard to look around and see what other people are doing, because Habersham County is unique in that we have never had the ability to ask for another penny of sales tax to use like a loss. Yes, and it's never been allowed, and I think that originally it was intended, this whole deal was intended to allow us and a few other counties or cities like us local option sales tax. I think that there's no law that is perfect. I think that it kind of got co-opted into this law that it is now. But the law, as far as the way it handles tax assessments and the tax assessor's office and all, there's a whole lot more to it than just us. But we've been asking for another opportunity for another penny. A lot of people have complained that the school board gets 2 cents and we can't get any and all this stuff. And as flawed as some may see this law as being, this is an opportunity that we have to help our homeowners, taxpayers who elected us, who voted for this, even maybe though that they didn't understand all the ramifications. I'm not sure we ever will. But this is our one opportunity to stay in with the program. And Bill, I'll ask you this. Can this be changed and amended over time, or would it have to go back for another vote statewide?
Well, I think that there's definitely going to be some touch-ups during this legislative session. There's some unusual things, especially about the tax assessor's piece of this, that they probably didn't intend, and so they're going to fix those for sure.
And I recognize, and I think we all do, that this is a way that they're asking us to put some skin in the game and take a leap of faith and hope that we would later have the opportunity or get that penny. Because if we don't, if we go along with it and we don't, our voters don't, then probably most of us would be forced to raise our millage rate.
Exactly.
You know, because the cost of doing business continues to rise. And that's going to make our, if we have a vote and it fails, can we have another vote later?
Yes, you can. Stephanie?
Mark, thank you for saying what you said. I want to just put a little bit finer point on it. So tonight, we're here with our discrete municipalities to think about if we want to be in with House Bill 581. So that's why we're here tonight. Are we in? If we're in, we're in. If we're out, we can't get back in. But our voters told us to be in. Okay? 63% of voters. Look, I'm in 2 counties. Most of my council is in Banks County. My taxes in Habersham County have gone crazy because of the assessed value. So if this is a way, think about all of the properties that are in your city. This is affecting just the ones that have a homestead exemption. Okay? Friends, if you don't have a homestead exemption for the county or the city run, go get it. Go get it. Go get your homestead exemption for the county and go get your homestead exemption for the city. So all of the properties that are in Baldwin, for example, right now tonight we're talking about the ones that have homestead exemptions. Just that little piece. And it will hold steady, right, based on CPI, my fair market value. Right? So guess what? Stephanie doesn't have a homestead exemption in the county. Guess where I'm going tomorrow? I'm going tomorrow. Right? I don't have a vote in Baldwin, but I'm going to encourage my council people to vote for this. My residents said they wanted it, and it will help the folks in on the Habersham side of that tremendously. Now, the floss, that is another conversation. We're not talking about the floss tonight. We're just talking about, are we opting into this House Bill 581? The floss will be a referendum in November. Okay? As an elected official, I can't argue for it or against it. I can tell you the benefits for the city, but it's illegal for me to tell you yes, vote for it, no, don't vote for it. But it's like crowdsourcing, right? It'll help us make up that money, right? That we have exempted out. And that not just people in Habersham will pay that penny, but anybody who's shopping in Habersham. If they're eating at their restaurants, they're buying gas in the county, so they're going to help us that way. So tonight, it's just about House Bill 581. Are we as cities in? And guess what? If one person is out, pardon? If one entity is out, we're all out.
I'm begging you.
You, let me clarify that. If one city opts out of the property tax homestead rollback, then you're out of the opportunity to put a referendum out for flaws.
Right, okay.
Everybody else is still in. You can't sort of negate the homestead rollback unless you opt out.
Okay.
And you had a question or a comment, Bruce?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what Councilman Reed was saying, there was a piece of legislation last year that would have exempted e-loss from the 2-penny cap for local government squash. Under that 2-penny cap, any type of loss and squash is under that 2-penny. Whenever all this came through, they just discarded that, didn't even look at it.
Yeah, that was Victor Anderson's proposed bill. That was the first one, and this is the fourth version. And I assure you there'll be a fifth version during this legislative cycle.
I know whenever I first talked to him, he thought that his bill got put into this, but it didn't. And that may be something else, which I'm not on the commission anymore, but the commission and the cities probably should look to him for pushing that bill again, to have that e-loss removed from that 2-penny cap.
I think that they're gonna, if the legislature believes that they took care of what Victor was trying to address as part of this bill.
That only applies to like 7 counties in the state. The other thing that I've had a lot of people come to me and question was, this automatically lowers my property tax. It does not automatically lower property tax. And that's one thing that I think the voters, when they voted for this, didn't understand. This limits the amount of inflationary value increase to a piece of property. Doesn't lower the property tax. The second part of it, the carrot, if you will, the floss, that has the potential to lower property tax through a rollback in exchange for sales tax. A lot of our citizens don't understand that.
Right.
And that's up to the people in this room to get them to understand that.
Well, and I think Mr. Reed hit the nail on the head in saying that it is a leap of faith. Historically, we
It is.
have a hard time getting any kind of SLOSS passed here.
Well,
So, and that's worrisome. It
We
is.
would have to really do a good marketing campaign or something, or hire a marketer to come in to do this
Right.
for us, since we aren't allowed to do it. To
I think
get that, to educate that, yes.
the first time, you're probably going to be really easy to get lost to pass
Right.
because it's an automatic straight rollback.
Mayor
The
Barrow?
problem is going to be in 5 years or 4 years, because it's for a 5-year
Right.
term. Whenever you put it back on the ballot to have it reviewed, I can hear it now. You're threatening me with a tax increase. I'm not going to vote for myself a tax increase. They're not going to understand what was it, 3 something mills?
4.4 mils.
4.4 mills, they're not going to understand the fact that, hey, we rolled the millage rate back that much for us to continue to operate the government at the funding level it is. If you don't vote for it to be renewed, it's going to have to be rolled back up that much. And then it's not going to matter how good of a commissioner or council person or whatever you are, come the next election cycle, you will be ousted.
Okay, Mayor Barrow, you had a comment?
Yeah, to Mayor Stephanie's point, obviously we're not allowed to advocate, but we're allowed to educate. And one of the reasons I was asking, what our peers are doing, is because it's estimated that a third-ish of sales tax comes from out of the county. If we know that Hall County is doing this, we say, listen, every time you go to Gainesville, or every time you go to Clayton, or Dakota, whatever, you're gonna be paying the same extra penny.
Right.
We're almost cutting our legs out from under ourselves by not doing the same as what our peers are doing. So, number one, oftentimes there's wisdom in numbers. You know what Hall County or Stevens or Raven is doing. But the other side is, if our people, are going to be paying that extra penny when they go visit these other towns. Or when they come to Habersham, we're not going to be charging that. That would have to be part of our educational process.
Right.
That's number one. My second point is, it looked kind of like a slopey graph and said, Habersham County is at the 50 percentile, and now it's at 24, if we do this.
Right.
That was another reason I was asking if we know what other counties would be doing, because if everybody does this, then mathematically we'd probably be around the same spot. But if other towns aren't doing this could also be part of our educational. Hey, listen, you're now going from 50% to 24% of tax entities in the state. I know it's impossible to answer, but that's where my head was at.
You're in a unique situation here in Habersham, though. You're like Bruce said, there's only 8 counties that have an e-loss. So this gives you the opportunity to have a local option sales tax that you don't have right now, and therefore you're able to. But Gainesville's opting out. Gainesville's already has a loss. I'm not sure why a county or city that has loss wants a second property tax rollback. Those folks have already got an advantage there, and this is not a revenue generator for them. So they've already have put downward pressure on their millage rates. Most of them would be more interested in T-SPLOS or some other more SPLOS. So
So I wonder if that would mean that,
we're in a more unique situation here.
I wonder if some of the other surrounding counties aren't doing this, that's gonna make the shoppers go, I mean, it's a penny, but depending on what you're buying, that penny can be quite a bit. So is that gonna send other people to other places rather than them shopping locally here to help their own property tax?
With T-SPLOS, there's 110 counties that have T-SPLOS. We don't have that. So there are already about that many that are at 8% or approaching 8%. So, Bruce?
Yeah, Bates and Raven are already at 8%.
Yeah.
So they have a pretty higher sales tax than we do. And, we tried to do a T-SPLOS a couple of years ago, and it failed. I think it would have fixed everybody's problem as far as roads go. I mean, City of Baldwin, y'all's roads in Bates County are tremendously better than the ones in Habersham. I'm sure Alto's is too.
Right.
And probably Toledo Falls. So, it's going to take a lot of education by everybody on the city councils, the county, on everybody's part to educate the citizens. If you do opt in, and this does go to a vote for a floss, it's up to y'all to educate the people. You can't tell folks to go vote for it, but you can explain to them what it'll do for them. That it'll roll the millage rate back, that it'll keep their taxes at a lower rate. You can do these services with it. Education goes a long ways with these folks.
Okay, Bruce, I think we're getting ahead of it. I think that floss is something that you're going to decide much later. You don't need to be debating that right now. And the public decides it. One thing I have talked to a lot of cities about is you've got a SPLOS coming up. SPLOS is a real add to revenue. If we don't have SPLOS, revenue is going to go down. FLOSS, this new one, is not a revenue generator. It's a rollback. So whether the cities decide they want to do that and the public decides that they want to vote for a referendum, that's another discussion for another day. But the key, you can't even approach that. You can't issue the referendum unless you all collectively decide that you're going to stay in. One of the things that some communities have been doing is issuing not a referendum, but a resolution to say that they are opting in, to take that off the table. And it might be a good time for you. Marksville, yes, ma'am.
Simple question, keeping it simple.
the property tax, you have a floating homestead
The
exemption.
exemption, those are
It
the.
would float based on the rise in the CPI.
Correct. So that would satisfy when you hear locals say that quite often, that they're tired of being burned from the south side.
No, that would come from the floss penny if that was approved.
It's a separate item, I
Yeah.
agree with you, I agree with you.
Mhm.
But it would help with their assessment
Yeah.
right now. And then later on, if they decide, if the community decides to go there, the floss, then that would help out. So two separate issues.
Right, two separate issues.
So, we want our question, right?
Okay, go ahead.
So in other words, if we opt in and the floss doesn't pass,
Does pass or doesn't? Does not pass.
then Mount Airy is going to be out all of basically their tax money for the year.
No, it would not rise as any faster. The homesteaded values wouldn't rise any faster than inflation. Now, that's not your whole tax base. That's a small portion of your tax base. So we're probably talking about, commercial goes up at whatever it's gonna go up, but not homesteaded values. And whenever I've looked at, I'd say that the residential properties, perhaps 50% of them are homesteaded. They could be homesteaded because you've got second homes, you've got apartments, you've got all kinds of other housing types other than. So as I pointed out earlier, when you look at the Demarest numbers, you're probably talking about less than 1% limitation on the growth of your digest. Could it be more? It could be 2%. But it's in that range. It's very, very tiny when you compare it to your total digest growth.
Bill,
Yes, sir.
Can the school board do anything that affects anything that you folks do?
The school board can opt in or opt out. It's their choice, but it doesn't affect what happens with the cities and county. You can still issue a referendum for the floss, even if the school opts out. Or if they opt in, doesn't matter. Good, great questions. Mike?
The other thing that I didn't pick up on at the very beginning of all these conversations was that I finally did, will straighten me out on it. We still get to set our own military. This does not force us to set a new military at any level or anything. We still control it. So if your homestead exemption drops your revenue down low enough, or don't get the loss, there's always the option to increase your military to make that back up. Which is kind of in and run around. We say the voters voted us in, we need to honor what we say. They don't know what they're voting for. They didn't, I mean, a lot of people can't even say that at the end of the referendum on the ballot, it said to allow us to initiate a loss.
I thought that referendum language was terrible. It didn't, I don't, if you had read the law and then read that little referendum, you wouldn't know that they were connected in any way. Yes, sir, Mike?
All right, this is the last thing I'm gonna say. The point is, we're up against a deadline. We have to make a decision. And I think that more is lost by not making a decision. We're gonna make good ones, we're gonna make bad ones. And this may not be a perfect bill, but it's what we have. And we can wish that we have something else. But that's gonna be on down the road. And, we've only got until the 1st of March to get this thing there are requirements we have to do. It's only fair that we all make decisions quickly, because as I understand it, if one city opts out, then the other cities can opt in if they want to. But the county and the cities as a whole could not have a floss referendum at a later date.
You're exactly
Is that
right.
correct?
That's exactly right, Mike.
Also, tell them what you told me about, if you opt out.
Okay, I would be delinquent if I didn't. I hesitate to say this. Don't misinterpret me, but one of the things that Mike's bringing up, appropriately so, is that even if a city or county opted out, the legislative delegation could opt you back in. So it may not stick. Now, I don't have any idea, and I don't pretend to read the mind of Chris Irving, Victor Anderson, Bo Hatchett. I have no idea what they think about this subject. You did have one of those three that initiated this thing.
Could we not make a decision until we invite them or Victor or somebody who really knows and really tell us what they think and what the law, what they meant and how it's gonna affect
And
us?
I can't speak for them. Victor was at one of our first meetings, talked at great length about it, and I know he's keenly interested in it. You might want to just speak to him directly yourself.
Mark, I talked to Victor. I called Victor a couple of weeks ago, and I said, how bad do you want to see us in it? What do you think? And he said, opt in. He said, opt in. You can always opt out later. Right. He said, and as Phil said, legislature is in session.
You can't opt out.
5 years. 5 years.
No, it's gonna fly.
Oh, that's the clause.
The exemption, you're in it,
Oh, you're in it, that's right.
unless they change legislation.
There you go.
You're in.
So opt in. Opt in. He said there will be tweak them.
I think it's also important for the general public and all of us that work for cities or serve the cities, that the reason that our legislature put this before all of us for a vote was because the intention behind it was everyone in the state was complaining about these skyrocketing assessments. And so the catalyst for this was really the frustration of a homeowner saying, I was $120,000 this year, now all of a sudden I'm $210,000. How does this happen? And now this law is allowing us, or this floating exemption should be adopted, is saying, hey, we know that $210,000 is there, like that's what it's been valued at, but now we're just gonna increase it by inflation. So you actually have some sense of anticipatory control of what's coming for you next year. That you know that this is what your assessment is, and next year it's only gonna go up whatever the CPI is or whatever that practice is. But the intention is to help the homeowners, your stakeholders, the people who are invested in your community, who have built your community by virtue of living in it, to help offset the burden of that, you never know what's gonna come next. That's why this is here. This is why, whether or not they read the law or they voted on it, 65% said yes.
And to add to what Emily is saying, for property values, home values in the state of Georgia in the last 12 years, the thing about the CPI has gone up 3% that time. Locally, at least in the city of Denver, it's been going up 6.4%. Statewide, throughout Georgia, property values have gone up. Home property values have gone up 13%. If the tax assessors are doing their job, they will be chasing that number all the time. And so certainly the intention is to limit the tax digest growth, at least for homestead exempt properties. And that's the purpose. Do you want to hold cities?
Well, I was going to say, why don't we give the cities about 5 minutes to talk among themselves? And then, Mayor, you have a question?
I have a council member that's gonna have to leave. Can we just go ahead and push it? So we, because I've got a quorum and if he leaves,
Okay.
we go.
Okay, so we just want to, okay, yeah, do folks have a copy? I know Emily circulated our resolution for our council to vote on, and did other people get a copy of a resolution? Yeah, you're not required to vote, but we're trying to get an idea of who's in and who's out. So, Clarksville, you wanna go first? I mean, do you have a sense of where you are?
I think we've talked about it several times. We are willing to opt in as long as everybody else is opting in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we brought the referendum on this, but I hate to sign it unless everybody's signing the referendum. That's not.
Sure. The resolution.
The resolution.
Right. Well, ma'am?
If there is any city that does not plan to opt in, then now is the time to say it.
I guess that's a good question to ask it.
Okay. Is there any city who's not going to opt in?
Still not sure.
Tallulah Falls?
We're gonna go ahead, we're not positioning ourselves to opt out, I want to be clear. We are having our public hearings, and since we're having our two counties, Gilmore and Baden, we don't want to be in a position to get stuck, we also don't want to stick everybody else. So, we're just gonna do due diligence, we're gonna get feedback from our public. So I can't answer yes or no tonight. And I'll have the council mention if that's anyway, so. But I don't want that to be counted as we're opting out.
Mhm.
Well, then we can't sign it until we get.
Get a commitment one way or the other.
Alice?
Yeah.
All of it, of course, we've already got that as part of the hearing.
Public hearings on February 13th, we got two that day and then one.
That's so late for us, I mean, because we won't be able to do an hour.
You have to have 3 public hearings.
Advertise. But if yours are going that late and you're opting out, and then we don't have time. Yeah.
That's what the council in our last meeting had to do, based on our, wanted to be paper and
Yeah.
we were a little limited on
So if you guys were,
We all plan to do public hearings, I mean, that's,
I would still recommend the city of Baldwin sign a resolution, and it is good for our people, they voted on it on both sides. So whether floss is a reality or not, this exemption is a real, it's something tangible for non-tax properties, and that supersedes the option of floss. It is a decision, I mean, it's an.
so where's Baldwin?
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
where's Baldwin?
Yeah, here we go.
I said that I would still recommend for the city of Baldwin to sign our resolution of intent tonight because on either side, we're in Habersham County and in Banks County, and our voters voted for it. So it's our job to figure out how to make this exemption work, whether floss is a reality or not. So it is a concern that, everyone doesn't opt into it. However, the position is still the same, that our Habersham County and our Banks County voters alike said, we would like to see this exemption put into place, and it's our obligation to do it.
So as a city, that also has, counties, just like we do, and if I heard you correctly, you're like, hey, we hear you guys here in Habersham are probably gonna opt in, everybody's gonna opt in, but you don't wanna give that answer because you're not sure what Raven would do. I don't think that if, with your opting in, this would probably be a Phil question. Let's say we, in Baldwin, opt in and basically says, yeah, we're out. That's not gonna change anything for our residents in Habersham. It's just gonna be different for,
The largest number of existing homes.
Yeah.
In children wells.
yeah, but I think it would be, but I think it would be two separate. I think they say no. But I mean, even if you guys do say no and everyone, say yes,
That's what I'm saying, is if Raven County towns, or Raven County themselves decide to opt out,
yeah.
our largest tax base would then be locked in, if we opt in to that homestead exemption.
They would, even for, in the other
And
counties?
it's a one,
Yeah, we can't
split cities are one and done. Like, your decision is for your county, not your county.
It would affect both counties. Mike, how quickly can you have a meeting with your city council to give guidance to the rest of the cities?
More of them would have been here tonight, they didn't have this information
So can we check back with you in a week?
I'll ask you.
So it looks like Alto's out.
We're in.
We've adopted.
Baldwin?
Yeah. We're in.
Baldwin's in. Clarksville looks like it's in. Where's Pointy in?
As long as everybody stays in, we're in.
We're in Demarest.
Somebody opts out, then we're not.
Mayor, Demarest. Mayor Hunt.
We're working on that.
Mount Airy, where's Mount Airy?
We're the red-headed stepchild.
No, nobody knows about that. Yeah.
Bill, you forward your presentation to everyone.
No. I need somebody to help you do that.
Denver's to go too.
The county's go. All right, so we're waiting on the school lot.
We'll follow up with you in a week. And I'd like if there's somebody that could be central command for my presentation out to the other cities. Okay, thank you. So we'll get the presentation out to everybody.
Okay, so we need a motion to adjourn? Oh, wait a minute. What? To sign it? All right, we're gonna sign the resolution of intent, and we're signing our own, so. No, we're here, we have a meeting. We're in a meeting right now.
Oh, yeah, we're in the right.
Okay,
Well,
Alto, are you gonna sign the resolution tonight?
We did, we have.
You already signed it, so you can close your meeting. Right, Baldwin, we're gonna sign? And so then I need a motion. I need a motion to approve the resolution as presented. Is Clarksville going to sign the resolution? Okay. Is Cornelia signing the resolution? Not signing? Okay. Close your meeting? Okay. Demarest, are you signing tonight? All right, then you can close your meeting. Mount Airy, are you signing tonight?
No, I've got it on my desk, I'll sign it.
Sign tomorrow, close your meeting, and then, no, we don't have a quorum. Okay. Do we need a motion to close this meeting? Okay, we're good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight.
Republic for